Now we did.
All right, I will share our presentation. Where's the part where I make it big?
View and slideshow on the left top bar.
View. Okay. Cool. Well, thank you all for being here. Um, Appreciate you taking the time to join us. And we actually are offering this workshop, and then at the end, I'm going to also ask if there's folks that, or if there are topics that people want to dive into a little bit deeper for some more technical support. And this is in conjunction with the World Resource Institute. There's a lot of other Clean Cities coalitions like ours offering workshops and expos throughout the country this month. So this is our version of it here for our Western states. Okay, so we have like a full agenda. So, but with this view of people, perhaps we'll move through this quickly. But as I said, this recording will be helpful to share out to folks. But we have already done our welcome and introductions, and we have why electrify your fleet, electric school bus basics and charging. We'll hear from Jesse, who has met extensively with Haver, and we'll learn about funding and financing. We'll hear from Neil, who have a report out about the electric school buses that are in a few of the districts that they funded, operations and maintenance from Kevin, and then Dan with East Helena Public Schools will be joining in a little bit. He'll talk about their world experience, and then we'll kind of have a bit of a roundtable discussion and wrap up for next steps. So that is what we are getting into today. So need to, there we go. So where can you find electric school buses today? Everywhere except for Wyoming. I was hoping for some more Wyoming school district representation today, but we'll share this out to them and hopefully we'll get one soon. And this chart looks like it's showing us just how much mo how the growth of electric school bus deployment throughout the country over the past several years. And there's different timelines here. I think Jesse just added this in.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting. I just came across it this morning actually. I just thought people would like to see that the growth continues and has been. We've had electric school buses for quite a while.
Okay, so why are we even trying to electrify our school buses? So there are many benefits of a clean school bus. They're healthier for our students, drivers, our community, and the planet. There's a lot of reduced fuel costs, operation costs, and maintenance costs. They're safe, reliable, and quiet. And as far as the yeah, so the harms of diesel exhaust. So just the fact that there are children on these buses, I feel like they are just the population that we should be protecting with proper air quality the most. And there's documented negative impacts on student health, and they're particularly susceptible because the children's lungs are still developing. So having the particulate matter associated with diesel exhaust in the buses, that many of them are driving for long periods of time, and over time, throughout the school year and then year after year is just detrimental to children's health. And then it's also been it's the impacts of diesel exhaust have been associated with some of the um, impacts on test scores for students. So it's not just the health of their lungs, but it's their performance in school as well. So this is very basic. What is an electric school bus? So electric school buses is an electric vehicle. So it runs on electric only, and it requires charging the onboard battery packs from an external power source. Electric school buses, they're rated, the batteries are rated in kilowatt hours. The larger batteries typically have an increased range. And then the average range, I have some charts in the future coming up here with more nuances between manufacturers, but the range of a bus varies based on the size of the battery, in addition to weather conditions, driving behavior, topography, and then the load on the vehicles as well. And so the bus battery size divided by the range is what shows you the efficiency of the bus. So sorry, this is so blurry. I screenshotted this from a different presentation from the Department of Energy Clean Cities. And we typically have access to a lot of their presentations. And for whatever reason, these were only formatted in presentate or in on YouTube. So but I didn't think I needed to also recreate this chart. So pardon the blurriness. But you can see here the different OEMs that are offering various models of electric vehicles. And you can see the range is typically between 100 to 155 miles, and then the battery size in each of these units. And then you can see over here on the far right, the estimated efficiency. So there are some that are far more efficient than others. So moving along, the next step really is to understand what your charging needs are. So your daily charging needs, it's the miles per day times the kilowatt per hour. So that's looking back here on this efficiency piece. So when you're looking at your school district's routes and then understanding which route you're putting your school bus on, and based on the previous slide, when the ranges are between 100 to 150 miles, um, you'll definitely want to be putting an electric school bus on a route, particularly in the Mountain West, that's below 100 miles per day. So what does this look like? Kind of calculating it out. So if you have, say you are going 100 miles, then your electrical or your power or your the energy that you need to go 100 miles and that you'll need to replenish each evening is 150 kilowatt hours. And you can see that calculated out here. So if you have, your your round trip for the day is 75 miles or 50 miles, or maybe you put it on a 25-mile route, then you just multiply that out by 1.5, and then you'll know what you need to replenish via charging either throughout the day or overnight. And so that's helpful information to understand moving into choosing your charging infrastructure. And then also, like, it's very important to have consistent parking locations. These buses need to have access to charging. And that's pretty typical, I think, for a school district to have one location where their buses are located, either a barn or a yard. So, yeah, this is just showing you and how this helps you understand how long it will take to charge to meet the energy needs that you have for the school bus based on the route that your bus is on. So this is saying typical, but I don't know that this is actually typical out west, but I'd be interested to hear what Dan has to say, and then we'll learn a little bit more about Haver's vehicle use. But so say it's 150 kW that you need. So that was basically that 100-mile route. You divide that by the power output of your charging infrastructure, and then you'll get an understanding of how long that will take. So in this scenario, to recharge your bus at 150 kW or kilowatt hours, it will take about almost 8 hours, which you can then, understand, okay, our bus is parked overnight for, 10, 12 hours. We can definitely, charge that amount. And so another thing to be mindful of as well is just the load on your building. So some school districts may need to do some charging midday, but that also needs to be balanced with what the load is currently that is already on the existing building, because you don't want to run into demand charges. So these are the different charging levels. There's level 1, level 2, DC fast charge. Um, Level 1 really isn't adequate for a school bus, but this is a way that many people are able to charge their light duty, just cars at home. Level 2 is very suitable for charging a school bus overnight, and even 4 hours or so in the middle of the day. So you can see here, and then DC fast charging is another option. It's a lot more. Jesse will talk more about this, about the price of the charging infrastructure, but if you're capable of charging your vehicle at a level two rate, that will be significantly less expensive, though DC fast charging is an option. So then just understanding your electrical needs. This is definitely something that you're going to bring in an electrician for, but just to have a little bit of understanding going into it ourselves, you need to understand what capacity you have, what potential capacity you have on your panel in the wherever that is at your facility. So typically, a panel will be 200 to 400 amps, and you can see within these panels there are circuit breakers. So these are fuses that protect devices from drawing too much power. And each circuit breaker, they have a specific power capacity. So the breaker needs to match the draw of your station. And then you just need to, when you go to the panel, you will understand, and the electrician that will be working with you on this will understand the amount of space that you might have on your current panel. And hopefully there will be space. And just for context, I think it's in the next slide here. Sorry, again, this is blurry. But so basically, each EVSE that's permanently installed, they need to have their own circuit. And then the amount of uh, the breaker's capacity here. So for just one of those level ones, it's a 110 outlet. You'd need to have a 20 amp breaker because based on the National Electric Code here, the breakers need to be sized for 125% of what the maximum load is. So then with a level two station that's 80 amps, you'd need access to a 100 amp breaker. There are definitely level two stations that are lower in amperage. 80 amps is probably what you're going to want for charging a school bus, where a lower amperage is very acceptable for just having an electric car at your house. And then, as school districts are building new facilities, they have, if there's a lot of locations that have requirements to be EV ready or EV capable. So some of your buildings might already have the capacity to add in charging infrastructure pretty easily and readily. So I just wanted to make note of that, there might be like a circuit breaker already designated for your charging infrastructure located at your panel if you are dealing with a newer building. But that's very, depending on district and buildings and that sort of thing. And the costs associated with preparing for electric vehicle charging infrastructure, it's very recommended now to make sure that buildings have the capacity to offer charging infrastructure on newer builds. So that's a consideration for school districts as they build out that infrastructure. And this is, I think I can pass it off to Jesse here, but this is just
Sure.
information about why they work in Wyoming and Montana. I prepared the slide for a Wyoming presentation a while back, but pass it along.
Cool. So, yeah, as Alicia showed in a table earlier, the ranges for buses can vary from the lower end of maybe 100 miles to 200 or more miles. So, in a given day with a route of 50 miles or less, these can be adequate. It's a much shorter route. You can definitely charge every other day. Charging daily would allow for 50-mile routes with a 200 or with one of these buses, an average bus. One thing that's interesting about electric school buses, I don't think we ever recommend, and Kevin might talk differently with some of the fleets he operates, but we don't ever say you should change all or switch over all of your buses to electric. It's nice to diversify. So the example in Havre that I'll mention in more detail, they have, I don't know, 13 diesels, five gas, two electrics, and it allows some of them have better benefits for certain conditions, or maybe fuel gets more expensive, or just having a diversification of your fuel sources is kind of an advantage. They can charge inside or outside. Some people who haven't had electric vehicles think that they have to stay indoors. That's not necessarily the case. I mean, storing any vehicle indoors is nice, but it's not needed necessarily. They can operate in very cold conditions. A common misconception is that EVs don't work in the cold. They work very well in the cold. You will see a range reduction, and that can be reduced by having an onboard diesel exhaust heater or diesel fuel heater. And so you will see a drop in range in the cold weather. That's one of the downsides. Um, and as Alicia mentioned, level two chargers are usually sufficient, and the higher amperage ones are probably ideal. I think this one, I think we have a bunch of those in Yellowstone National Park. I think it's an 80 amp Clipper Creek charger. Next slide. Alicia, can you change the slide? I can't.
Sorry, there we go.
Um, yeah, so this is just a very basic overview of how charging an EV would work. This diagram illustrates a level two charger because it's showing alternating current coming in. So on the left, you see the charging station. In this case, it would be level two with AC power coming in. And then buses and EVs in general have an onboard um, inverter that would invert from AC to DC, and then that's what charges the DC battery. And then there could be a converter the other way from DC to AC to power the electric motors. Um, so there's switching of AC to DC often. Level three, which isn't shown here, would be DC coming in straight into the battery, so it wouldn't have to have that inverter on board, that AC to DC. That's one of the reasons you can have faster charging and higher rates of charge. Next, right? Yeah, so on the left, I'm showing an example of a level three station. Just I wanted to draw attention to the auxiliary or the additional infrastructure needed with the charger. You don't necessarily just buy a charger. You almost always will need a transformer, um, and sometimes switch gear and some other accessories. So it's more than just a simple charger. And these are typically about 150 kilowatts. You can get them lower to maybe 50. I think you can even get 25 kilowatt DC fast chargers, but on average, I think you mostly see 150 kilowatt chargers, not kilowatt hour, but kilowatt chargers. They'll go up to 350 in North America. That's what you'll see at Electrify America stations. And so they'll cost probably, it really varies, but maybe 100,000, maybe a little bit less for the equipment, and then maybe a similar amount to install. Again, there's a lot more to install here than a level two. On the right, I'm showing a level two. This is up at Havre. That beige or white box is the charger. The gray box is a panel. So really, the charger is just a simple small box. And this one is an 80 amp level two charger. And I looked them up this morning on Amazon, and you can get a decent one. A Grizzly is what we recommend for a lot of things. They're about $900. So if you happen to have that panel right next to where you want to install it, the installation would probably only cost you a couple $100, but I would guess on average you might spend 500 or $600, and it could be a lot more if you have to trench. But the level two is definitely a lot charger to buy and a lot cheaper to buy and a lot cheaper to install. Next slide. I just wanted to mention this because it's something cool that is an option for some school districts. So vehicle to grid, also called V to G or V to X. There's also vehicle to load or vehicle to house. There's a bunch of different acronyms, but essentially what this is sending the power from the bus, the battery in the bus back into the grid or to a building or a load. It's also called bidirectional charging. So picture on the bottom there shows a couple EVs and it shows the different versions. So you got vehicle to vehicle. You can actually charge, you can run the house off of the power from an EV. Also, you can charge the EV from the house. So that's what the bidirectionality. Um, so with buses, they have such a large battery that some school districts have already deployed this, and they're illustrated in the map on the right, where on peak demand charges, middle of the day, when buildings or services may require higher energy for maybe AC, air conditioning, and there sometimes are peak demand charges. This can shave off those demands. So that's one advantage. Also, buses sit idle most of the summers, and in these districts, I would assume most of them, the utility has some incentive for them to sell power back to the grid at a higher price than it costs to charge them. So you charge them at night, you discharge them in the daytime when the energy is worth more. And so that's the way that some school districts have been able to monetize having these buses idle all summer. In Montana Northwestern Energy doesn't buy back electricity, so it's not maybe a financially viable option to sell it back, but it definitely can act as a microgrid for emergency preparedness. Next slide. So as I mentioned, electric school buses do work in Montana. They work quite well, and so they can definitely work in Wyoming. In extremely cold weather. And you can hear this. NPR has done some podcasts and some reporting on the buses up in Havre. Years ago, they've done it, and one of the stories they talk about, and Neil knows it well. It was minus 40. It's been like that a couple of winters, not this winter for sure. I don't think we've been to minus 20 for very long. But when it was minus 40, of course, diesel gels. A lot of diesel will gel even with additive in it. The air actuated doors on the diesel buses on Havre were not able to open, so the doors were stuck in the open mode. The electric school buses don't have any of the swing issues, and they work quite well in winter. Again, the range could be decreased, but aside from that, they do work quite well. Another thing that Woody, who's up in Havre, has mentioned his bus drivers love, and any of the other operators here can talk to this, but having the buses preconditioned for when the driver arrives in the morning is very easy. It can be done indoors because there's no emissions. They get to the bus, it's fully warmed up, ready to go. The batteries are conditioned so that they can be warm and have better capacity. That way, the cold doesn't affect them quite as much. So that's a cool advantage uh, from the electric school bus. Also, as I show in this picture with all that exhaust, you don't have any of that while the buses are sitting there idling, trying to warm up. The extra weight of the batteries in pretty much all EVs, this is the case, can provide better traction. The low center of gravity of the batteries allows for really good stability. And so with good tires, they handle probably better than a lot of the gas or diesel versions. Next slide. Oh, I didn't. I wanted to change some stuff here, and I didn't. There's a new picture, so I won't go over that same stuff again. Um, so again, Neil can talk to us in some other details because they've worked closely with this. But I've been up to visit Havre every year, and this is the first year I didn't go visit Woody because it didn't work out. But the previous 2 years, I'd stop by, got a ride in the bus. I think each year, just pictures from the first year when he received them. So he didn't have a ton of experience, but they did go through most of that winter already. So Havre is one of the colder places in Montana. It's up near the Canadian border. Population is just under 10,000. Squeeze at my door. Hopefully, my kid will go answer it. So their fleet is comprised at the time of 17 diesels, 3 gas buses. They have 4 coaches for the travel team and traveling events, and they have 2 electric school buses. These ones are Lion Electric that aren't really available anymore, but we do have quite a few of them in Montana. Um, they were using them and still use them on these electric school buses on smaller city routes. One's about 30 miles per day, and the other one's about 45 miles a day. And then, as I showed earlier, the charging infrastructure they use are 2 80 amp link chargers, just level 2 chargers. Next slide. So at the time in 2023, the cost comparison broke down as shown there for the fuel. So at the time, gas buses maybe were costing 73 cents per mile for the fuel. Diesel buses were 58 cents per mile. And the electrics were about 31 cents per mile for the fuel. Lion Electric at this time was sending people over there to Havre to train the technicians or train the mechanics on how to maintain buses. These buses are stored in an unheated but covered part of the building that actually just holds, you can see it in the picture there, just holds 2 buses. Maybe they can stick 3 in there. That's where the charging is located. Next slide. I did these calculations yesterday with the price of fuel where it is, and our electricity is higher than it was 2 years ago. Um, so let's see here, the gas is about 69 cents per mile just for the fuel. And doing that math at 5 miles per gallon, so it could vary on the bus, would equate to about 69 cents per mile for the fuel alone. That's a little bit higher than it was. For diesel, doing that same calculations, it's a little bit cheaper per mile for the fuel. Then with electric, the price of electricity went up a little bit since then, but it's about 21 cents per mile. Um, yeah, and so in the cold weather, some of the heating capacity or some of the heating needs can be drawn from the battery, which would reduce your range and maybe increase your per mile cost. But with the ones in Havre, for example, they have a diesel auxiliary heater, so that's not as much of an issue. Next slide. Um, Include it. So that was just the fuel costs, but if you were to include the maintenance cost and the savings from an EV, that increases your per mile cost to operate quite a bit. So in these internal combustion engines, both gas and diesel, there are thousands and thousands of moving parts. So more maintenance. For gas and diesel buses, you have oil changes, fuel filters, brake changes, transmission fluids, um, and then in the diesel, you have your emission systems, which are a huge headache for fleet managers. So you have your DPF, your diesel particulate filters, diesel exhaust fluid, and injectors are more maintenance. Of course, you have your tires, cabin air filters, lubrication, and all that kind of stuff exists on the electric as well, but also on the diesel and gas. On the diesel, which is an interesting thing, in the wintertime, a lot of the school buses will use a block heater, and the ones in Havre in particular, those whatever it was, 16 or 17 buses, all running 1 kilowatt block heaters. If you take that time from Friday to Monday morning, that's 108 hours, and the in between overnights and the weekend, it's 108 hours per week at 1 kilowatt per hour. That's $15 per week, or the equivalent of 20 miles of bus range on an electric school bus per bus. And so they have 13 buses. So if you do that math, suddenly the block heaters alone are using as much electricity as the electric school buses are. So all that together, your gas and diesel buses are about 90 cents a mile. When you add the maintenance, because you still have to do tires and lubrication and stuff, maybe at 30 cents per mile for an electric school bus. So almost a third the cost overall to operate the bus. Slide. Alicia, jump in here.
Oh, I think I just included this last time that we were presenting to just Wyoming fleets, and it was actually the statute that I found that no district shall purchase or lease a school bus unless it first demonstrates that the school district has in good faith attempted to purchase or lease a bus that will be fully or partially paid for or rebated under the Diesel Emission Reduction Act. So basically, they're asking all of the school districts to look to see if DARA funding could apply. And often, there's very specific requirements for DARA, and I think a lot of, or some of the best uses for DARA funding, I would say, are for these alternative fuels. So pairing that with, EPA funding that had been um, an option previously, what really made the business case for that higher upfront cost of some of these vehicles. So just wanted to, communicate out that this is something that is written in statute that Wyoming school districts are meant to be looking at. And this is a slide of just kind of the steps toward going toward clean school buses. So, as I had mentioned earlier, with the ranges that school buses are, really looking at what routes can accommodate 100. I have here 120 miles of range. I would really look at less than that for sure. And then as in recent times, there had been funding for school buses, so understanding um, which school buses currently in your fleet meet the funding replacement requirements. And then we went through kind of assessing your energy needs, not just talking to an electrician, but also your utility, and then selecting your charging strategy based on that information, and then understanding the cost factors, like looking into the funding opportunities that are available to different districts, and then including beyond just receiving or getting prepared for the bus and the charging infrastructure, then have some mechanic training to support those who will be working on the school buses. So it's kind of just like a timeline or like these different phases or steps to go through toward getting cleaner school buses for your district. Then we have some resources, but I think at this point we can move on to Neil. So these resources, I think a lot of them are actually they might not be offered as much. I thought I cleaned it up, but let's see. Oh yeah, they're still oh, the technical assistance I don't believe is available, but I guess technical assistance in the being able to just go to this website and run through a lot of these different videos that talk about the same topics we're talking about today. And then this is the same thing. And then WRI has so many resources on their website. They have a whole website dedicated to electric school buses. And that, you could probably find most anything that you're interested in needing to learn about on their website. Um, but I will stop sharing and we can, I guess, see if there's any questions and then move on to hear Neil. Okay, well, we can just move on to Neil.
You see the first guy?
Yep.
Great. Again, my name is Neil Ullman. I'm an energy resource professional with the Energy Office, the Montana Department of Environmental Quality. And I'll give a brief overview of the electric school bus technical assistance project that we did a couple years ago with the first 6 districts in Montana to deploy electric school buses, including the fleet that Kevin and First Student manages in Billings, and also Dan, who hopefully will be on later in East Helena, was a part of this project. Um, so what we did we contracted with a consultant called VEIC to do this technical assistance project. We didn't want to have these districts that were early adapters, if you will, the first in Montana to deploy electric school buses, just buy them, get a bunch of money from either the EPA or DEQ, and then wish them the best of luck. We wanted to set them up to succeed as best as we could. And so we worked with 6 districts: Big Fork, Billings, which is served by First Student; Clinton, which is served by Hanley Transportation, a local transportation contractor; East Helena Schools, Fairfield, and Havre. And each of them received state or federal funding to purchase these electric school buses and the associated charging equipment. VEIC helped with the deployment of each of these buses. They visited, did site visits, and we held regular monthly meetings with them before, during, or before and after the buses were actually deployed to help each of the fleets plan for how things were going to go. We focused on operations and maintenance planning. When you're doing a check, when you're, keeping the buses road ready, doing that for a diesel is different than doing it for an electric bus. There's so many fewer moving parts in an electric bus, any electric vehicle for that matter. There's fewer things you have to do with an electric motor. There's no oil changes, there's no DEF fluid, no spark plugs or air filters. But there are other things that you need to keep in mind, like coolant levels and things of that nature. So making sure that each of the school bus fleets were ready to operate and maintain these buses and plan for issues as they might arise. Also, the associated charging equipment, planning for that. Each of the school districts did things slightly differently. Some had DC charging, some had level 2 charging, some stored them inside, some stored them outside. And so there's a variety of different ways that these different fleets tackled that challenge. Also, the technical assistance consultations, if the school districts, if the fleets had questions about how to deal with particular issues that might come up, we handed we handled those questions as they came up, and then also data collection, just so that we could see how this was going to work. We weren't assuming this technical assistance report didn't necessarily come in with a preconceived perception. We weren't trying to sell electric buses as the be all end all of everything. They're not. There are certainly challenges, as Dan and Kevin will get to in a few minutes, in the deployment, the delivery, and the operation of these buses. And they're certainly not for routes. They're definitely not for activities. Taking the football team across the state to the state tournament. That's not what these buses are for. They're for routes. And so collecting the data just so we could see how they were actually operating in Montana climates. And then the final report, which is still up on the DEQ's website, you can go to the link below, and there will be a big blue box that you can click on to get the PDF of the technical assistance report. So we wanted to include the good, the bad, and the ugly with this technical assistance report, not sugarcoat it. There certainly were problems with the initial deployment of these buses, but not all of them had to deal with the fact that they were auxiliary or that they were electric buses. Some of them were just because they were buses, and it gets super cold here in Montana sometimes. So we wanted to document that too. All of the electric buses that I'm aware of in Montana, during mild weather, they are zero emission buses. But during the winter, when you do need the heat, especially when it dips below freezing or below zero, you do need an extra boost to heat them up. And so all of them, as far as I'm aware, do have auxiliary fuel heaters that do use diesel. So there are some emissions associated with these buses during the winter months. And there were problems with those auxiliary fuel heaters, especially the ones that came with the Lion electric buses. As Jesse said, Lion is no longer doing sales within the United States. They're doing sales in Canada, but not the US. And those auxiliary fuel heaters had significant problems. And so sometimes the buses weren't able to operate. Now, if it was springtime, if it was April or May or June, or even the beginning of the fall in September, you didn't need those auxiliary fuel heaters. So even though it might not be working, you didn't really need it. So the bus could still operate. But we did have some not available days associated with auxiliary fuel heaters being inoperable. There were some codes and things that came up that didn't, that, we had to get some assistance from the manufacturers in order to address. But then some of the other things like the lights malfunctioning, that's a bus issue. That's not an electric bus issue. That's a simple bus issue. We also, as Jesse said, had issues with the hydraulics. In Montana, we're required to have 6-foot stop arms instead of just the stop sign that comes out from the side of the bus. There are hydraulic problems with those as well as with the doors, especially at very, very cold temperatures. So we saw some problems there. There were also some issues with recalls. Usually electric vehicles don't have, you don't have to send them back to the manufacturer, to the dealership. Usually it's something that, a software update can deal with. But until you get that software update addressed, sometimes you need to keep your vehicle off the road. So that was an issue. There were also some charger issues in Fairfield in particular, where they are using DC chargers. There was significant problems initially with getting those chargers operational. That was eventually ironed out, and that ended up being not a problem moving forward. They had other issues, but we did deal with that. And one of the things that we did with these buses, this picture is in Missoula at the Harlow's Truck Center. This is the dealership for IC buses. This happens to be one of the buses that was eventually delivered to First Student in Billings, but we did a meet and greet and Q&A for this bus and put it up on hydraulics so we could all get underneath it, see where the batteries were, see where the auxiliary fuel heater was, answer all the questions different transportation directors from school districts that attended might have. And so it was a really good way to be able to answer those initial questions. We did a lot of things, as Jesse said in his slide. We, analyzed the fuel costs per mile. But it's not as simple as saying, we're not using diesel and we're only using the batteries. As I said, we also have all of these buses with auxiliary fuel heaters, and it's going to be if it's below zero and you have to have it heated, you have to have diesel in there. And so in order for them to operate, you're still going to be using diesel fuel in order for these buses to be out on routes. And so we calculated in not only the electricity costs of powering the high voltage batteries that operate the electric motor, but then also the diesel that operates the auxiliary fuel heaters. And in the cases of Havre and Clinton, the associated demand charges. Usually when you are a manufacturing plant and you're building something, you're pumping out a product, and all of a sudden you need to ramp up production of whatever it is that you're producing. There's a demand cost that the utility will charge, and with electric vehicles, you get that demand charge, even though it's not, you're not producing anything like a plant might be. You get hit with the demand charge. And in the case of Havre, where their transportation area is home to not only the buses, but also the transportation staff, the maintenance staff, computers, heaters, lights, and then also all of those 17 diesel buses that Jesse noted in his presentation also all have auxiliary fuel heaters. So Havre was actually already hitting demand charges because of their diesel buses and the auxiliary fuel heaters. And so we wanted to find a charging system solution for Havre that mitigated any additional demand charges as much as possible. But even when you factor all those things into account, the fuel cost is still less than the diesel bus. In Big Fork, which is the only district of the original six that does not operate or is not served by Northwestern Energy, they're in the Flathead Electric Cooperative territory. They're getting an amazing deal because their electricity rates are half of what Northwestern customers are. And so they don't have demand charges. And so their fueling costs for their one bus up there is a great savings compared to diesel and even compared to the other electrics. But even when you factor all these things in, we're trying not to put our finger on the scale of saying this is good, this is bad. But when you just look at the raw numbers, it's still cheaper fuel per mile to go with an electric bus in Montana than it is with your baseline diesel bus. And we also wanted to get the impressions from the people interacting with the electric buses. Most of them said they would recommend electric buses to other school districts in Montana. A lot of the drivers and mechanics agreed that the buses were easy to use. They were certainly quieter. Jesse, when he showed that picture of the two Havre buses, they do keep a third bus in that single garage area. And when I was up there a few years ago, the diesel bus left and we had it all stop talking because we couldn't hear each other. And finally, the diesel left. And then also, as we were up there, we wanted to take it on a trip around town. And I actually didn't know that the bus was rolling backwards until I looked at it and it was almost on me. And so it's nice to be able to hear. The drivers, I think, also like it because they can hear what the kids are doing in the back and they get away with less trouble than they might otherwise on a noisier diesel bus. They thought that the buses generally were a good fit. They liked the cold weather performance, the acceleration, the quietness. The regenerative braking is another fun feature of any electric vehicle, whether you're driving a passenger vehicle, a Tesla, or a Chevy Bolt or whatever, or if you're driving an electric bus. When you take your foot off the accelerator, you can't call it a gas pedal. When you take your foot off the accelerator, the regenerative braking uses the heat from the brake pads and turns it into electricity and puts it back into the battery. So you're almost literally refueling as you're slowing down. In fact, in Clinton, they found that the lower that you put the state of charge for the battery, the more aggressive the regenerative braking was. And they got additional benefits from that more aggressive regeneration so that they didn't have to charge up as much. And also, when they're coming up to a stop to pick up a student, they only had to tap the brake in order to come to a full stop. By the time they got to that student, they were already at nearly a full stop, and they just had to tap the brake in order to come to a full stop. And so that reduces the wear and tear on the battery pad or the brake pads. There were certainly some issues and some concerns, mostly associated with the fact that five out of the six school districts were operating line electric. There was significant customer service and also technical assistance issues from line electric at the time. And then that kind of all snowballed to them declaring whatever the Canadians call bankruptcy, and then them pulling out of the US market. That was certainly a problem with international buses. I think that First Student is deploying, and then also some other districts are getting right now. There's less of that issue, but it was certainly an issue with that one particular manufacturer. This kind of shows again what Jesse was talking about in the fuel savings per mile. Bus costs have gone up. I don't know. I don't think that the gasoline or propane bus costs are accurate anymore, but diesel bus costs, when I started with DEQ several years ago, I did have, in fact, the upfront cost between $80,000 and $90,000, and now that's almost doubled. And that's due to any number of different things. But when you look at the fuel economy, um, you know, this is taken from the Argonne National Labs A Fleet tool. You get about 7 miles per gallon. There are these associated emissions that Alicia talked about at the beginning of the presentation. But then when you look at a battery electric bus, yes, there is a massive, massive upfront cost. And this doesn't make sense for a school district unless you get some sort of financing help, whether it's through grants or something else. But the fuel cost per mile is significantly less. The fuel efficiency is significantly greater. And then, of course, especially when you're not having to use your auxiliary fuel heater, there are no emissions. The associated greenhouse gas emissions there are mostly from the generation of the electricity itself. But from the tailpipe emissions perspective, it's zero unless you're using that auxiliary fuel heater. On the charging side, a lot of people say, especially in Montana and Wyoming, well, it's a coal-powered bus. And that's true to some extent, but because these buses are so much more efficient, in Montana, and this is from the U.S. Department of Energy, that was updated just recently, I think, with the emissions associated with generating electricity in Montana. And this isn't all the energy that's actually used in Montana. So it's a little bit of a blunt instrument here from DOE. This is the energy that's generated in Montana. But it shows here that even with 36% coal, which has dropped significantly over the last several years in terms of how much or what our percentages of energy generated in Montana. But even with 36% coal, a rising amount of natural gas is probably a little bit higher now that the Yellowstone generating facility is online. But we have a massive amount of hydro. Over a third of our energy generated is hydro, and then a lot of wind as well. Over 20% of our electricity is from wind. It's very clean compared to, this is for passenger vehicles primarily, so it talks about gasoline, but it is very clean to drive an electric vehicle in Montana. And even in Wyoming, where you have much more coal power generation, this number also has dropped significantly, at least 20% in the last couple of years. But even with 61% coal generation, energy generation in Wyoming, it's still cleaner to drive an electric vehicle in Wyoming than it is to drive a gasoline or even a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid vehicle. And so these buses are clean. So this is great news for EV drivers in both of our states. I'm happy to answer questions anytime about this report that we did, and also the results that came out, good, bad, and ugly, as I said. And we're still in the process of deploying more electric school buses in Montana as we speak, and we hope to have more news about that probably sometime next year. And I will hand it back off to Alicia.
Thank you, Neil. That was all very helpful. We did just have a couple more people join, and we are recording this. So if you missed if you weren't able to hear what Neil had to say, you can go back and watch that after. Next, we're going to, I think on the agenda, is it Kevin that was next or is it Dan? I don't remember. Well,
I forget what we had, who we had, because we changed things up quite a bit. So I'm not sure what was the topic. I think it might have been Kevin, operations.
yes, operations and maintenance, the experience that you have from all of the school buses that you have deployed.
Yeah, thanks, and appreciate you allowing us to join. I don't have slides today. I'll just kind of talk through it first. Want to make sure we thank our friends at the Montana Energy Office and DEQ there for the support they've given us in Montana, as well as Northwest Energy, which have been great partners for the 8 units we're currently operating in Billings and the two more that will be added in the coming months to that program. At First Student, as I mentioned earlier, we operate across North America. 42 states and 6 provinces of Canada. We do operate 743 as of today electric school buses across that geography. And we have about 10 million miles of operations under our belt at this point in time. So we've had them in the fleet now for almost 5 years, the oldest bus, but new ones being deployed every day. We'll add more than 500 into the fleet by the time school year starts up next year as we continue to progress through our program. When it comes to maintenance, you got to remember now you have two items to keep your eye on. So you've got the bus and the charging infrastructure. So you've got to understand as you're installing the charging infrastructure to your location, you're going to need to figure out how to maintain it as well as the bus. And that's probably new for most organizations. Maybe you maintain a CNG station or a propane station in the past, but now you're going to have to maintain charging infrastructure as well. The good news is that's doable because there's some overlap between maintaining an electric school bus and maintaining a charging infrastructure. So first and foremost, when it comes to maintenance, when you purchase your bus, when you purchase your charging infrastructure, make sure you understand and have fully vetted out the warranty period and what is included in that warranty period. It can range anywhere from 1 to 3 years, depending on the various components you're looking at, and even longer when it comes to some of the bus items as well. As a part of that warranty, it should include training. So you want to make sure your staff is then going to be trained as it progresses through that warranty period. Now, I do not recommend you say you're going to train us all in the first mile and get us to level 3 capability. That's going to be lost. So what we do at First Student is we have a glide slope so that when the warranty expires, our techs are fully trained up to level 3. What does level 3 means? That means you can work on the high voltage system of the bus itself. So the day the bus shows up, we're not touching high voltage. None of our staff at that particular location is trained for high voltage. But the goal is through that 3-year warranty period to get that staff trained up to that level. The other thing you'll need to budget for, a lot of people have talked about that as you move into the maintenance side, is you do have increases. You'll have to be aware that there's some personal protection equipment you'll have to begin to procure to protect those who work on high voltage and some additional shop tools. It's not that much, but you need to be prepared to make sure you understand what those are and include those in there. Fortunately, though, a lot of the maintenance for the bus goes away. As has been mentioned, there's no more oil changes and fluid changes to deal with. So some of the routine maintenance begins to go down, but you do have to keep an eye on the other systems of the bus. Same for charger maintenance. There's not a significant amount, that needs to be done there. Some preventative maintenance on some of them includes cleaning filters, that type of deal. The one area of maintenance that we've seen increase is tires. These are heavier vehicles, so the tires are wearing a little bit faster than what you traditionally see in a diesel bus, but I am sure your techs are used to changing tires today. There's no different of changing those on an electric school bus as it relates there. The really thing we began to really emphasize again as we move through this transition phase is know your warranty. make sure you're fully versed. Don't necessarily take the one that they put in front of you. Talk through and get as much as you can. Our OEM partners on both the buses and charging stations have been really terrific. As some of you may be aware, we actually had a pretty significant collision with one of our electric units in Billings. Everybody cooperated. That bus is back on the road. It took a little bit of time, but it's back on the road and working. And the vast majority of what was needed to be done on that bus was covered under the warranty for the bus. The driver who hit us was not had the insurance capability to help us out much, but we will be collecting those dollars back as well. But I'm happy to talk through this. I just want everybody to know that if you're not a customer or first student, that doesn't access us. We do offer consulting services to help people do this transition to electric. So no, we're out there to support that. No, we're not going to come in and try to take over your fleet. We want you to be successful because every successfully deployed electric school bus benefits us all. And so feel free to reach out and we'll be glad to help you through this transition process because it can be done. As mentioned, we're operating in Montana. We've seen the exact same conditions you all face. We operate in Quebec. We have over 300 units in Quebec alone, and we've not missed a single day because of cold weather operations there. But again, happy to answer questions, and thank you for allowing us to be here today.
I have a question, Kevin, regarding the tires wearing slightly more. Do you think that's attributed to the slightly additional weight or the fact that drivers can drive more aggressively and accelerate more quickly?
Well, they're not spinning the tires.
Right.
So
But starting and stopping can wear them a bit quicker, right?
Yeah, we're thinking it's more related to the additional weight because we're really the drivers are not using the brakes as much. So the deceleration is more gradual because of the rigidity braking in the bus.
I have a question about your business model or just your relationship with school districts. Are there school districts that reach out to you that are interested in electric buses and they're only interested in working with you for your experience with electric buses, yet they maintain their gasoline portion, or do you have to do everything for a school?
No, we do provide soup to nuts services, but we divide those soups and nuts up. So if you just want us to do electrical consulting, help you pick the buses, pick the charging stations to be successful, we will do that, leave and go home after that's done. If you want us to design and install your charging infrastructure and maintain your charging infrastructure, we will do that and limit it to that area. So everything we do comprehensively, we also offer in bite-sized pieces to customers.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. We do, yeah, we have our own approach to charging. It's designed for school buses, for school bus operators. That allows, a lot of flexibility. I think one of the things that is occurring, fortunately, we're seeing it in Billings. We planned ahead. We already had 2 charging stations ready to go. So when these 2 new buses are going to show up, they're going to plug in and go the first day they show up. So we think about that. Can you expand the system? Can you add on to it? Because a lot of people are going to start with 2, 3, maybe 4 buses in their fleet. But you want to make sure you're thinking to the future as well, because we do believe over the next several years, significant, the vast majority of school buses will transition to all electric. So you don't want to install a bunch of infrastructure today that a couple of 3 years from now you're going to have to rip out and redo because you decided to expand. You need to plan for that while you're doing this.
So did you upgrade the panel capacity then at the time of the first 2 station installations so then that there's space?
No, we went ahead and designed it for a string of 10 from the get-go. And so built it out that way. We were figuring that we would be adding some in pretty quickly thereafter. But then our panel and switch gear is capable of adding additional chargers to it. I think we can go up to, Neil, you may be able to correct me if I'm wrong. I think we can go up to 20 at that without upgrading the panel and switch gear. We will have to install additional charging infrastructure.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise. This is
no, anytime. Again, we're very happy with our relationship with our colleagues in Montana and want to help others in Wyoming. Now, we don't have any operations in Wyoming, but happy to look at that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we really want to get some in Wyoming. Um, all right, well, we can move on to hear from Dan with East Helena Schools and learn about your firsthand experience with an electric school bus.
All right. Well, sorry for being late to the party. I was at an IEP meeting covering for one of my principals who's on vacation in Mexico right now. So I'm hoping he's having fun in the sun, and it ran me a little bit late for the meeting. So I missed some of the conversation during the first half hour. And so I hope I'm not redundant in any of my comments today. If I am, I apologize. I'm not trying to waste people's time. Um, the the idea that I'm going to talk to you about boots on the ground about our bus is a little misleading because my office is not where the bus barn is. And so, although I've been involved in the procurement of our electric bus and its implementation from the get-go, worked very closely with Neil on our initial grant to get our bus spec'd out, purchased, and ordered. In terms of what's going on with it on the day-to-day right now, I actually had to reach out to my transportation supervisor, and he sat down with the assigned driver on that bus right now and put together some information for me to relay for you guys. Um, just a little bit, our situation, we are only operating one Lion C electric bus at this time. We purchased that bus, I don't know, Neil, maybe back in 2022 was when we actually placed our initial order. Um, we had applied for a grant through the Montana DEQ as part of the Volkswagen settlement, and that grant was able to uh, uh, cover about 85% of the initial purchase price of the bus, which was in the neighborhood of $400,000. The balance was paid by the district. We are in the process working with an outside partner of trying to claim the tax credit, up to $40,000 tax credit that we think we might be entitled to. But we haven't seen that money yet, so I'm not sure if we're going to get it or not, but it would be fabulous if we did. You may or may not be aware, our experience with Lion Electric was kind of a disaster. They were I would almost say misleading at the start about what they were going to be able to deliver and the timelines that we were working within. And our concern was that they were scaling up too fast to be able to meet their obligations, and that proved out to be pretty true. In fact, I think it took approximately 2 years from the time we placed our order, maybe a little more than 2 years, until the bus actually arrived here in East Helena. During that time, we had actually applied for the EPA rebate program under the Biden administration's bill and secured an additional $1 million in rebates from the EPA for 3 additional Lion buses. But we delayed placing any orders for those because we still hadn't received our first bus, and we were getting a little testy with Lion about it. The reason we were locked in with Lion was because they partnered with us on the grant application as our third-party vendor. So we hesitated on that, and in the meantime, they filed bankruptcy and stopped filling U.S. orders, and so we never did order or receive our $1 million in EPA rebates. And at that point, the school board, given all the issues that we had had with our initial Lion order, was wanting to tap the brakes, so to speak, on electric bus orders until we actually received one electric bus and verified that it was going to work for us here in East Helena. So that's just a little bit about our history. I will say that the reason that we were initially interested in Lion is they did some on-the-ground demonstrations here in Montana, down in Livingston and up in Great Falls. I attended one of those, actually rode on one of their buses, drove it, was very impressed with the product, the way it was put together, the purpose-built mentality of Lion Electric. They had a lot of great things going to them for them in terms of their design and the overall product. And that was why we jumped in with them to get started. Some of the things that we had to deal with that people told us might be huge issues that turned out to be non-issues for us. One of them was charging infrastructure. We brought our electrician in. He evaluated the situation over at the bus barn, determined that we had enough power to run the charger that was spec'd out for our bus. So the charger was ordered and installed prior to the bus ever being delivered. In fact, it was ordered and installed about a year and a half prior to the bus ever being delivered. Um, and so that wasn't a huge issue for us. But again, we're only putting one charger online. So depending on if we were going to add additional charging for the 3 additional buses that we thought we might order, we thought we might have to upgrade our equipment at the bus barn to be able to.
Oops.
Well, we lost him.
That was really abrupt. I wonder what happened. Well, I hope he noticed right away and can hop in.
Well, I'll say that at our stakeholder meeting in Helena last fall, we had that bus come over to Helena, and we all got to check it out and drive in it. And it had a cool feature where at slow speeds, it would play some rock and roll song over the speaker as the warning for the children around there. That was kind of unique, and I think we have a little video of that on our Instagram or something.
Can all electric buses be programmed to do that? Because that is kind of a fun feature.
I think the Lion Electrics have that ability. I don't know if all of them do.
The line buses come with any electric vehicle. One of the things is, and this is why you might see Instagram reels of people thinking they're about to be beamed up by the mothership, is that they have these sounds that they make at low speeds so that people who are blind, especially, or people that aren't paying attention to what's going on around them, know that there's a car there or a bus, and to be aware of traffic. With Lion, they come pre-installed with the same sound. I think that's on their maybe transit system or their subway system. I don't remember what they have up there in Canada, but then you can change it to whatever sound you want. I know some guys were thinking about changing it to Harley sound or to the school fight song, although I think the fight song got real old real quick. So anyway, it's just a safety thing. I think the international buses have that. Kevin, do you know?
I don't remember offhand. It's noise generation has been a pretty constant issue with EVs across the board. I don't think the Department of Transportation in the U.S. side has come up with a final recommendation on the noise generation component.
Yeah, with EVs in general, it's 25 miles an hour or slower, it usually makes a noise. Passenger vehicles, and above 25, the noise goes away.
Hi, Dan. Welcome back.
Sorry. Hey, I got back from that meeting and my computer had the good old restart message, and it said restart needed, but it will automatically restart in 4 hours. And now I'm just realizing that message must have popped up about 3 hours and 45 minutes ago. Oh, I totally apologize. So, is it okay if I pick up where I left off, or
For it. Love that.
Okay. So I think I basically covered charging infrastructure. And a little side note on that is as part of the drama that we had dealing with Lion Electric, they initially spec'd out a bus that called for a level 2 alternating current AC charger. That Blink charger was delivered, installed, set up, and is fully operational. And when they finally delivered the bus to us, we plugged it into the charger and the bus wouldn't charge, and we messed around with it for about 2.5 or 3 weeks before somehow, between going back and forth with Lion, we figured out that they had misread the order and wired our bus for DC charging. And so we required a much serious and larger charger for the bus that had to be delivered and installed. So now we have 2 chargers, one that's basically non-functional to us, but the good news is Lion didn't charge us for the extra second charger, which was quite expensive, so that worked out okay. The one thing that wasn't, and I'll make one more comment, and then I'm going to kind of just review the notes from my transportation supervisor and bus driver, and then take any questions you might have. The one thing that I didn't see too much of on the agenda that I just wanted to touch on for folks who are considering electric bus implementation, is something that we haven't really actually taken care of ourselves here in East Helena, that this was kind of timely that you guys put this together, because it got me thinking about it, is I think it's really important that you arrange to do some first responder training with your EMTs, local fire service, police, and possibly even tow truck drivers in your area regarding the way to properly take care of and deal with your electric bus. Lion did share with us some of their YouTube-based training that they had, and it basically just teaches first responders the hazards of approaching electric vehicle after a crash, and most importantly, where the emergency shutoffs are for the high voltage power, so that they can access that before anybody gets hurt. So that's something that I think is important to keep in mind. Generally, I think whoever your vendor is they're going to help provide that. But like here in East Helena, we have a variety of volunteer fire departments around the area. So depending on where the bus is en route, it could be a different group of people who's responding to that crash. And so that's going to be a little bit of a challenge for us getting the word out and getting some of that training taken care of.
I'll jump in right here quick. I just shared in the chat that we're offering some first responder training online for free.
Awesome.
I've reached out to as many Montana first responders as I can. I think I've had 15 reply, but it's been pretty difficult. So feel free to share that. And then from that, people who take this in the next few weeks, we will choose 2 to send to a full-on in-person EV first responder training in St. George's, Utah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's super helpful. I'll check that out. So then I just compiled some anecdotal information from our crew over at the bus barn. One of the things that I think has been mentioned already, and urban legend that I just want to dispel, is the notion that when it gets cold out, you can't use your electric bus. Our bus works great in cold weather. We did have a pretty major issue with it from the time it was first delivered. Lion Electric utilized a auxiliary diesel heater that was faulty from the start. They had a ton of warranty issues with them. The one that they installed in our bus never worked from the day it arrived. And then they filed bankruptcy, so there was warranty on the heater, but there wasn't warranty from Lion to get the heater diagnosed, removed, or replaced. We did work a little bit with eFleet out of Colorado. They offered to send a technician up to diagnose the heater and get it replaced under warranty. The cost to get that technician up here to even look at it and diagnose it was nearly half the cost that we were looking at to just take it out and replace it with a Webasto heater. So that's what we ended up doing, having a local mechanic install that. And now it works great. And of course, we haven't had much winter in Montana this year, but we have had a few days that were down around 0 degrees. The bus was out on route on those days, no problem. Interior cabin temperature was comfortable. Students were comfortable, driver was comfortable, and the bus is working great. That heater, when we're using it on a daily basis, uses about 15 gallons of diesel fuel in 3 weeks and requires to be refilled. It's got a 15-gallon tank, so about 5 gallons a week of diesel. Is what we use. Right now, we've got the bus operating on a route that is about 25 miles long. The bus range is rated at about 124-ish miles. So we could, what they told me is right now they're charging the bus whenever it's stopped. And basically that's what it says in the owner's manual. So they're following the owner's manual, but they said they could easily go a couple days on route morning and afternoon without charging the bus before having to recharge it. To touch back on some of the earlier comments on regenerative braking, my understanding of how that works and how it works with our bus is your regenerative braking doesn't actually kick in until your bus drops below 80% capacity and charge. So there's actually kind of an incentive to not charge the bus over 80% so that you're accessing your regen braking option when the driver's out on route. In terms of maintenance and service, we really have had no major issues with our bus, so that's been super exciting. There was a service bulletin that had to do with some faulty fuse connections under the dash that could potentially lead to a fire. Lion sent us the bulletin along with the detailed description for how to replace the wiring harness and those fuses. My guys, who are bus drivers and not necessarily trained mechanics, but happen to be pretty handy, were able to do that themselves without relying on outside help. Other than that, we really haven't had any issues with the mechanical aspects of the bus or the software of the bus. And we've been running it daily on route now we've had it for 2 years. We used it during temperate weather before we got the heater fixed, but now for about the last 3 to 4 months, we've been running it every day, twice a day on route. Let's see. I think the big thing that I want to hit on is the fact that my driver who drives the bus absolutely loves it, thinks it's great. He says it's a pleasure to drive. It's super enjoyable, and he doesn't have a lot of issues with it. I will circle back to one of the considerations is that you do need to set aside some time for some driver training. There are some differences between the way a diesel bus operates and electric bus operates, but that's pretty quick and painless to get your guys and gals up to speed to be able to operate the electric bus. And then the last thing I just wanted to touch on, I thought was pretty neat that these guys included this in their notes, is that the kids on Route 9 love the bus. They really enjoy riding it. It had to go out of service for a while when we were getting the heater installed. The kids complained every day that they had to ride the old stinky diesel bus. And one of the biggest things, and this is one of the first things I noticed about an electric bus when I rode on it, and I was pleasantly surprised to see the comments about it in my feedback from staff, is how quiet they are inside when you're a passenger or a driver. So because there's not a diesel engine and everything associated with it, and because of the sound deadening that we had installed in our bus, it's very quiet to operate. Students are able to have conversations in a conversational tone throughout the bus. They don't have to yell over the background noise. And it brings down just the stress level in the bus. It brings down the noise level in the bus. The driver says he just really enjoys and appreciates that. And I don't hear a lot of people talking about that when they're talking about electric buses. But I think if you get on one and ride one, and for me, it was the first thing I noticed about it. And so it was nice for me to see that our folks were recognizing that and enjoying that as well. They said the kids liked the bus so much that they just really seem relaxed and enjoy riding it. And here's a little side note. We have had zero vandalism on our electric bus. And my driver attributes that to the fact that the kids just love riding on it and they love their bus. And so if that's not a great reason to get one, I don't know what is. And with that, I'll just shut up and take any questions if anybody's got any.
Mm-hmm. Well, it looks like we have a question. It says, Dan, did I understand that Lion also did your infrastructure? Did you use another company?
They provided the charger. So our first charger was a Blink charger. We purchased it through Lion. I'm not really sure how that relationship worked. There was obviously a third-party vendor in there, but we wrote our check to Lion. Our local electrician installed it himself. So we got the spec bulletin, shared it with him. He reviewed it and then took him a few hours to get it installed. And I don't remember, it wasn't a significant cost, first of all, and it may have been covered by the grant in that particular case. But in the second charger, Lion did pay for it, and they drop shipped it directly to us. That was an $18,000 charger, and our electrician installed that one too. Again, the cost was not super prohibitive. It was under $1,000 to get it installed, and it's been working great. We haven't had any issues with it.
What do you know what the the charging station, the DC fast charging station manufacturer is?
I don't remember. I can picture it in my head, but I just don't have that detail at my fingertips right now.
But 18,000 is pretty reasonable for that type of charging station.
Yeah, my eyes just about popped out of my head when I saw the invoice on it. So I was thrilled that Lion took the hit on that because it was their mistake. But it's obviously a faster charger and much more substantial. So.
I wanted to follow up on a few things Dan said. One is on the safety training. In addition to Jesse's link, I also dropped a link to the National Transportation Safety Administration that has downloadable emergency response guides for pretty much every electric vehicle, and I think even non-electric vehicle is in there. And so if you look, you can look up Lion. I think you can also look up IC or International and bring up their safety specs. I keep a copy of my safety response guide in both of my electric cars, just for reference in case something bad happens. But that's something that you can see. And one of the things is that, with a bus, and it being painted National School Bus yellow, when you get to an emergency scene, you're still attacking it the same way that you would any other type of bus. If you need to come in from the top, um, come in from the side, you're not going to run the risk of cutting some high voltage wiring because the emergency response guide will show you that everything is below those black lines that are on the side of the bus. And so if you need to come in now, if you are dealing with a rollover situation, it's a little bit dicier because then all of a sudden the batteries are on the top and the kids are on the bottom. But it kind of shows you that generally speaking, the response attack is going to be the same regardless of the fuel. And then Dan referenced a company that's doing his maintenance now that Lion Electric has pulled out of the United States, and I dropped a link to them. They're called Fleet eForce. And as far as I can tell, they're a bunch of tech nerds that work for companies that have now gone under, like Lion, like Proterra, which was in the transit bus business for a while. And in the case of Lion, I think that they were able to sometime last year procure a boatload of spare parts. And so Dan, even though he got hosed on his warranty for Lion Electric, which is still a source of contention for all of us, um, he's able to get maintenance work when he needs it. It sounds like luckily after everything went wrong at the beginning, now things are finally going right. But if something does need to be fixed with the drivetrain, with the batteries, that Fleet eForce out of Colorado does have the parts and the technical expertise to do that. I called their main line number and it got routed to one of their techs who happened to be in Chicago at the time, even though he's based out of Denver, and they're doing work all over the place. I think they also have maintenance agreements with the University of Montana on their Proterra transit buses, with Fairfield Schools, I think, on their Lion Electric school buses, and some others as well. So Fleet eForce is the one that's maintaining these buses now that Lion Electric has pulled out.
Yeah, thanks, Neil, for that. And I didn't mean to poo-poo the potential there. The part of the reason for the cost for having them come up and look at that auxiliary diesel heater was it was going to be a one-off trip, just coming to East Helena to look at that bus. What they're trying to do, their service model is to, as some service needs stack up in a regional area, send a technician out for a couple weeks to visit the different sites where folks may have buses that need to be looked at, which will bring down the cost significantly to secure service. They did buy a whole boatload of Lion parts. They also secured, they told me, all of Lion's software, so they can diagnose, upgrade, and deal with software issues, which some districts have dealt with. And they also, when I was talking with them, they had already hired 3 of Lion's US-based technicians that got laid off as a result of the bankruptcy. So they actually have Lion-based, factory-based technicians on their staff. So that's a great resource for us because that was one of our first big questions was what's going to happen the first time this thing breaks and nobody knows how to fix it. And so at least we've got a resource there to keep it on the road.
I had something I wanted to jump in and add. I was in DC for some electric school bus training last fall, and we toured Fairfax County in Virginia, and they have a dozen electric school buses, and each has a dedicated level 3 charger, and that was part of a collaboration with the utility to offer power back to the grid for that vehicle to grid. But they did mention that the students were more calm and happier on the bus, and that they think that that related or gave the kids better grades. Um, I hadn't. I mean, you can assume that, but I'm glad that you mentioned that, Dan, because I hadn't heard that before. But you kind of corroborated what they said, that the students perform better in school because they're on a quieter bus and there's less stress.
Yeah, it just, their comment was the whole anxiety level of the bus is just lower. Because people can talk in a conversational tone versus raising their voices, it just really, they said even the hyper kids were more calm and relaxed and better behaved on the bus. If that's not a testimonial for bus drivers, I don't know what is.
We're seeing special needs improvement pretty significantly.
I believe it.
Not only report on the bus, but report from teachers in the classroom.
Yep.
And when you consider, as you're probably well aware, Dan, drivers quit for two primary reasons: student behavior and pay. Yep. If we were able to take student behavior off the table, that's going to be a big thing on keeping drivers. And you say about students, like I had a driver, similar situation. Our fuel heater went out on the bus. She refused to turn it into maintenance until summertime because she did not want to give up the bus and be put back on the diesel bus, and afraid that she wouldn't get the electric bus back. So she waited till summer when school was out to put the bus in for maintenance service.
That's awesome.
Dan, even with some of the issues you had originally, now that you are having success, and like you said, the students like it, the driver likes it, is the school board, or are you interested in more electric buses again, or do you feel comfortable with that amount in your fleet?
Well, I'd like to see a few more added. I will say it's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle with my board. Neil knows who I'm talking about. They're a little bit old school, and their mentality is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We've been using diesel buses for decades and not had issues. And they just, like I said, the whole experience with Lion was not positive. But the end result, now actually having the bus in service and out on route and getting some positive reviews and people seeing it around town, I think that's going to help to turn the tide on that a little bit. So when the opportunity arises, I'll probably hit them with the opportunity to pursue additional opportunities, grants, whatever types of resources are out there.
I have a question for Kevin. So it sounds like, with Lion having gone bankrupt, they're not necessarily the preferred manufacturer to go through. And I know in Montana, the dealer offers IC buses. I know there's like a suite of other offerings, but have you noticed, is there a manufacturer bus that rises to the top that you prefer to deploy in your fleet?
Well, we've purchased from everybody at this juncture on the Type C and D units. And there's no, a clear winner. I will say everybody gets better as time goes on, and we're seeing less out of the box problems. The biggest problems we see on new deliveries are actually interoperability issues between bus charger and the software, and getting that resolved. That is starting to become better as well. Yeah, I don't recommend any particular provider at this point in time, because it's still, we're still buying from the three legacy providers on the Type C and D units.
Okay.
I would flag, Alicia, that for school districts that are maybe looking at this recording later on, that there are case studies for not only Montana, but also Montana similar states for the other OEMs. So in Montana, as we've talked about, right now we only have Lion Electric and IC buses operating, for electric buses. But if you look over in West Fargo, North Dakota, they've been operating a Bluebird electric bus for quite a while now, I think, close to 10 years, and they love it. They only have the one, as far as I understand, but it works out great for them. Obviously, they're in the Great Plains, so they don't have to deal with the mountain issues that we do, but they like it. And then before the electric buses arrived here in Montana, the other place I was pointing to was Tok, Alaska, TOK. They also, it's a super small community, and they receive funding from the state of Alaska from a portion of their Volkswagen diesel emission settlement to get a Thomas built bus.
Oh.
And that bus has been operating great for them. What was interesting about them is that, given how remote that community is, a lot of their electricity in Tok is powered by diesel generators. So they're going to take a diesel bus off the route and then fuel it with diesel electricity. And so one of the requirements the state of Alaska made was to put on some solar panels to the transportation shed to offset some of that electricity use. And it's been working great up there. And the guy who I spoke to, who owns the transportation contractor company, I think within a month of when he got his Thomas built bus, the temperature dropped to like negative 35. And he was like, well, great, let's see how this goes. And it worked great for him. And it was the same thing up in Havre with the Line Electric bus. They actually weren't even ready to put it on routes when the temperature, the wind chill dropped down there down to negative 35 or negative 40. They forced it onto routes before they were ready, and it worked out great. Same thing in Big Fork. And so I think there's a lot of Montana-like scenarios for the other manufactured buses. I haven't seen, what is it, Green Valley out of West Virginia. I think they're the only ones that do the Class D, the flat front 80 plus passenger bus. I haven't seen any of those out in action, but for the other legacy ones that Kevin was referring to, for Thomas built buses, International, and Bluebird, a lot of them are operating in Montana-like climates.
Great, that is helpful. And it looks like Carolina, how do you say your name? Carolina, put a link here as well for other case studies and testimonials.
WRI, to what you said at the beginning, Alicia, offers a whole host of great resources. One of them is basically a buyer's guide where you can sit down and look at all the different ways you can trick out your electric bus with battery capacity, seating capacity, and things of that nature. And so, in addition to what Carolina offered, there's a whole host of resources out there to be able to find the bus that would work best for your situation. As I think Jesse used in his presentation, most of the electric buses in Montana use the baseline entry level, if you will, bus or battery capacity that have about 100-ish miles of range to them. The ones that First Student operates in Billings have the largest battery capacity size that International offers, but and they all made that decision based off of the routes that they were thinking about putting them on, the types of roads they're going to be on. Dan mentioned that all of his are in town. Hanley Transportation in Clinton, their buses operate on a mixture on a single route. It'll be on both back road gravel roads as well as the interstate on I-90. And so they operate at highway speeds as well as very slow gravel road speeds, especially during the winter where you need to be cautious. So lots of resources available out there to decide what's best for you.
My dog is right here. We are, I suppose, in the kind of roundtable discussion portion here. So if there's any other thoughts, and then I'm going to pull up the presentation because I had a couple other comments I was going to make too, and that Haley has a couple slides too, if I can find it. Does anyone else have any other questions? How are you all doing over there in Livingston with things right now?
Hi. We just got notice the other day from Saxton that we increase in how much funds we're going to be getting which is pretty cool. So we're gonna get $250,000 for our bus instead. Your face looks weird. Can you hear me?
You cut out, at least for
yeah,
me, you cut out for a second. I heard the 250,000, but I missed the first bit. Maybe you just want to repeat it.
yeah.
Yeah. Let me change. Is that better now?
Oh, that's a lot
Yeah.
better.
Okay, yeah, so Saxton just sent an email the other day that said that we are gonna like our funds are gonna increase from 200,000 to 250,000, which I was in a different meeting from 10 to 11, so maybe you guys talked about this, but like everything that like is showing on like the EPA website is different than what we're hearing.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about the previous funding in the earlier part of this webinar. Yeah, I'm not certain why the amount you would be receiving is changing and why it's different from the EPA. I wonder, Neil, if you have any insight on that. Oh, Neil's.
I think what we heard was that somebody dropped out, and so they're going to take that funding and spread it over a couple of our
Oh,
schools instead.
okay.
Yeah.
That's great news, Alicia. Yeah,
Yeah.
so for people looking into funding opportunities, the EPA's Clean School Bus Program, funded by the um, bipartisan infrastructure law, has funded a lot of different school districts across Montana, including the ones that are already deployed in Clinton, Big Fork, and Fairfield, and Livingston, where Alicia's from, is going to be getting a little bit of that too. But given the makeup of the community in Livingston, they were eligible for a lower amount of funding. And so it's great news that you're going to be getting a little bit more. EPA right now is in the middle of a request for information, trying to figure out how to change their priorities given the new administration. Well, it's not new anymore, it's been over a year, but how they're going to manage that program moving forward. I think the hope is they actually will put out the last amount of funding from the EPA's Clean School Bus Program, but there's no timetable on when funding will be available. But for school districts watching this, or even the ones that have already received funding, keep your eyes and ears open for future funding opportunities. I think the new administration wants to focus a little bit more on non-electric buses, so propane would be the main one, although they list liquefied natural gas and compressed natural gas, which and hydrogen, which really isn't a thing for school buses. But anyway, it's promising that they're asking for input and hopefully being able to put out those more funding in the future.
Yeah, and it was based on like we weren't like a high needs school, but somehow Big Sky was. So Big Sky is like basically going to get like $375,000 per bus, and we were bumped up to 250.
Yeah. And as Carolina just mentioned in the chat, the bipartisan infrastructure law requires that at least half of the EPA clean school bus funding go towards electric school buses. And that was pointed out to the EPA, or reminded to them on their RFI webinar a week or two ago. So we'll see what they end up deciding to do with the other half, but there should be more electric school bus funding available from the EPA in the future. We'll just have to wait and see.
Alicia, it's Kevin Matthews. If you get something in writing on that, would you find a way to get that to me? That's news on the non-priority school districts. That makes a difference for some of our projects. It may be just limited to Montana, but I would like to know.
Um, yeah, it didn't come to me. It came to like the school district superintendent who forwarded it to me. But we were part of the 2024. Where are you from, Kevin?
Well, we're nationwide, so
Oh. Yeah, so
uh,
we were our like that came like directly from like the Harlow's bus people that maybe that like we were part of the 2024 funding, but we just still don't have our bus yet because my school district is like dragging their feet. But um yeah, that was news to me. I had no idea. I just was forwarded an email, so I'm not much help.
okay. Was the email from EPA?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah. So, Kevin, Livingston is in the same boat that you guys are in Bozeman.
Right.
where the Livingston rebate application was submitted by Harlow's Truck Center for a new international school bus. And similar to you, I wonder if maybe Bozeman Public Schools received some sort of notice from Harlow's since they, well,
No, see, we're the applicant for Bozeman.
submitted it. Yeah,
Yeah,
so maybe
that's
Bozeman
what I was
Public Schools
asking.
got
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. I'll drop a note to our grant coordinator and check in with the agency and see what's up. Thank you,
Yep.
though, for giving that heads up.
Okay, for next steps, as Neil mentioned, the EPA currently has a request for information open for the Clean School Bus Program, and I think they really want to hear back from fleet operations folks, school districts, officials, manufacturers, really to guide the program in the future. But as Neil mentioned, they are interested in maybe emphasizing other fuels, where previously the last several rounds had really been focused on electric. But I think it's important that some of the I'm hopeful that some of the information that they receive will be positive for electric school buses, particularly with some of those fleets that had prepared for future deployments of electric buses where they've built out the infrastructure and they're prepared for that. So I think it's in their best interest to continue along that route. But just wanted, if anybody's interested in responding to that, you can, and we can share some. Oh, Carolina, you can go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to share a lot of the RFI, the first three sections of the RFI, EPA is asking about alternative fuels and alternative fuel infrastructure. But the last two sections, sections 4 and 5, are asking specifically about supply chains, purchasing requirements, what kind of down payment school districts have to put up. And then the fifth section, I think, is really important. They're asking for feedback on limitations or risk assessments that they should conduct for for-profit companies. And so anyone who's had an experience with Lion buses, for example, I think your insight into how to prevent that from happening in the future would be really great, because they are interested in how can they better assess the risk that certain companies may pose or conflicts of interest or things like that, so that school districts aren't hurt by for-profit companies. So just wanted to put that out there for anyone who might be thinking about providing comments. That is a really useful insight that EPA could use.
Thank you for that context. That's really helpful. Yeah, it is not fair that some of the school districts have been burned by these for-profit businesses. And then for us, for moving forward, we have time and capacity where we would like to offer some follow-up sessions to this webinar that we had today. And we'd like to potentially dive deeper into a few different topics that are of interest, but just wanting to see what folks want to hear more from, hear more about. And we can do that in webinar format or in person. It can also just be one-on-one sessions as well.
I'd like to just take this opportunity. I see other fuels make all bus operators aware that renewable diesel is a great option for existing diesel buses. You can reduce the life cycle emissions by 75%, and tailpipe emissions are also reduced significantly, and you reduce the wear and tear on your emission system. So there are some maintenance savings by using renewable diesel. We make it in Great Falls, Montana. You can buy it at retail in Belgrade, Montana, and fuel distributors can get it to your bulk tank. So I think everyone should be aware that's a great option to do now while you're waiting for more electric or other fueled buses. And we do a monthly working group and have for 3 years about renewable diesel. So if anybody wants to join, you can find it on our website. And we also have recordings from all of those meetings. So there are a dozen or maybe 20 different renewable diesel meetings if anybody's interested. It's a better fuel than diesel, period. And I've been pushing it quite hard for the last couple of years.
Thank you, Jesse. Well, I guess we'll send out an email to those who also RSVP'd but weren't able to make it, to see if there's other ideas, and then also just to our general invitation list to see if there's anything specific, and maybe watch for some other announcements from us on what we'll be focused on. And then we do want to take the opportunity to utilize to like share out some information from another program of ours that isn't as related to school buses, but it's helped, like as an organization, we cover a lot of different areas, and I think it's helpful to sprinkle in, just like Jesse mentioned, the renewable diesel work that our organization does. So I'll hand it over to Haley real quick, cover this, and then actually prior to that, is there any last thoughts or questions before we move on to that? And that will be our final thing. Okay. Haley, are you still?
Yep. Hey, so just I know we only have 4 minutes left, so I'll keep this really short. But just wanted to let you all know about a program we work with called Empower. They are part of the Department of Energy, and it's a program to try to expand workplace charging across the country. And so if you go to the next slide, you'll see these are the businesses in Wyoming, mostly in Jackson, and in Montana that we've worked with, who have signed the pledge and or have installed workplace chargers for their employees to use, as well as customers. Just we wanted to spotlight one of our businesses that works with us is actually an apartment complex. So they're MUD, which is like a even better benefit because they're providing workplace charging for their employees, but also for their residents. And they took advantage of a different program of ours to receive 2 level 2 chargers to install in their parking garage. So just a win-win all around, to highlight them specifically.
Thank you, Haley. Actually, Dan, when you mentioned that you have a level 2 charging station that you don't need school bus use, I was thinking like that could be used for your employees. Maybe you have some other smaller vehicles that you could swap out for electric at some point. But yeah, it could, that I don't know.
We actually were talking about that yesterday, looking for an option for a maintenance vehicle or a mail vehicle. That would be a smaller over-the-road vehicle that we would use, that we could use that charger for, and moving it to another location. That Blink charger can be set up with a public-facing account where the public can use it. And I have heard of districts that are using that as a revenue tool, as a side gig, basically, to generate a little revenue for the district. So that's just something that we're thinking about. It's like I said, it's just sitting there right now. So Neil, if you ever want to charge your Volkswagens, drop on in and we'll take care of you.
I was thinking the exact same thing Alicia said, and I was going to mention it right before she jumped ahead of me to say the same thing.
Yeah.
But where is the charger in East Helena?
So the Blink charger is actually installed in the bus barn. It's locked up in a secure location. It's not online with the Blink network. It's set up as a private charger, so you won't see it on the maps.
Yeah,
But we can go into on the admin side and change the status of that charger if we put it in a public location. So that's something that I've been kind of thinking about, because it's serving no purpose over there right now.
Yeah, I'm in Bozeman. I drive an EV just like Neil, and I drive to Helena often enough. And in the summer I can get there and back without charging, but in the winter I can't. And there's really nothing on the east side of Helena to charge ever since somebody backed into that charger and smashed it. And so driving into town is a little bit extra. But at 80 amps, while most cars can't accept that level of charge, it's at least most can accept 11. And it would be worth a short detour, even if it wasn't in a public spot. Like if it was somewhere that you were let people go, I think people would benefit by using it.
Yeah, that's good information. It's something that I hadn't really contemplated. And I think it was, I don't know if I was reading material for this meeting or for the RFI meeting that the EPA ran last week, that I just kind of came across that. And I was like, well, I never really thought about trying to use it in that capacity. So that's something that we might kick around. So
reach out if you have any questions for small mail vehicles, like you were mentioning. The used market is pretty good, and there are some new ones that are great options. So
awesome. Sounds good.
Thank you for joining us, Bitsy. But we're all wrapping up right now too. Carolina, if you could send me that template, I'll share that out with everyone with a follow-up email. Thank you for that offer. That would be helpful. But thank you everyone for taking the time to be with us today, and especially those who have taken time to share their expertise. We really appreciate you taking the time to share that. I think it's so much more helpful for folks to learn from those that have that are experiencing this, and yeah, it just will help kind of move everything forward. So be on the lookout for follow-up meetings, and please reach out to us if you have topic suggestions, and even just like I said, if we want to have some one-on-one conversations about your project, we'll support everyone in the best way that we can. So thank you very much, and we will look for a follow-up email with the recording and materials.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Sounds
Dan,
great.
Neil, and Kevin, for your time. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for including us.
Thank you.